Welcome in, everybody, to Fantasy Pros MLB. This is the Fantasy Baseball Podcast. It's me, Joey P, Joe Pisapia. With me today, Joe Orrico and the Welsh, as we continue on our position previews for the 2026 Fantasy Baseball season. Our ultimate guides are here. So if you've missed any, go check them out on our YouTube channel. Subscribe to Fantasy Pros MLB and, of course, our podcast feed as well. You can catch up. We got the pitchers coming next week. Some big guests, too, for that. So make sure you're getting up to speed on all the guys in 2026, all the rankings, all the sleepers, all the busts, and all the must-haves, because we've got them all for you. And today we've got the outfield as well. So we're going to talk about those guys here, where they rank. Let's jump in here with the top of the crop here. Aaron Judge at number 1, Juan Soto at 2, Ronald Acuna at 3, Julio Rodriguez at 4, Kyle Tucker, the newest Dodger, at 5, Fernando Tatis at 6, Corbin Carroll and whatever's left of his handmade bone at 7. We'll talk about that, I guess, at some point. Jackson Chourio at 8, Pete Crow Armstrong at 9, James Wood at 10. Then we have Brent Rooker, Wyatt Langford at 12, and we're going to do 15 in this group to make it a little bit more economical for time. So Roman Anthony at 13, my boy, after Wyatt Langford at 12, Riley Green at 14, coming off a great year, and Jackson Merrill at 15. So let's kick off a debate here, because Pete Crow Armstrong is a guy I want to talk about. Lefties last year did not hit them. Lefties in his career did not hit them. When you talk about the splits of this player, they are drastic, and the second half numbers were incredibly drastic as well for him in terms of disappointment. And then you have James Wood. I know the Nats have had some tough times here. You know, they continue to jettison players. You've got, some guys still around him. We're hoping that things start to look up a little bit more for the Nats as time goes by. But, James Wood, a pretty solid season for him. But I want to flash these numbers for you real quick when it comes to Pete Crow, because they are very drastic when we're debating him. Last year, versus right-handed pitching, 271 batting average, versus lefties, 188. Versus right-handed pitching, 838 OPS, a 594 OPS against left-handed pitching. In the first half, 25 homers, 27 steals. He more than paid for his ADP. But in the second half, the batting average dropped from 265 to 216. The OPS went from 847 to 634. So Welsh, the question is, with the home runs going from 25 and 71 RBI to 6 and 24 in the second half, has Pete Crow Armstrong got figured out? Is he a good investment in 2026?
Both of these guys, they just have these big warts. Is he a good investment? I think there's definitely some pieces to it. If you only got the first half of Pete Crow, he was incredible, but he fell apart just like James Wood did. There has been conversation in camp early on that they've identified a few things. I think Alex Bregman has been working with him. There's been a lot of positive, like, hey, at least he's open to working through a lot of these things, that they've identified some stuff that can probably help with some of the consistency. Now, do I think the consistency is going to help him improve versus left-handed pitchers? I'm really not sure. It's like a really, really bad split. But at the end of the year, it is monster numbers. 31 homers, 35 stolen bases. That average could have looked a lot better. He made some major improvements, got the ball in the air at an elite level, barreled the ball at an elite level. You just needed him to walk a little bit less. So is he a good investment? I think it's tough to say based on that really bad second half. He's probably a guy that I'm avoiding, but I won't be surprised when he's a 30-30 guy or a 25-25 guy. Everyone would have been able to stomach him a ton better if it was just spanned out through the season. If he would have ended 31-35 with a 247 average, but there wasn't this dramatic split, I think we'd be talking about him a little bit different. We'd be like, the things could, but no, it's because he was incredible and then he was the worst thing ever. So I think any of these guys, even though they're so loud tools, both these players, you didn't ask me about James Wood. We'll talk about him whenever you point to him.
Who is between the two of them, Wood or Crow? Who would you rather have?
I think it's going to be James Wood, and he had a historically bad second half too. The only thing is he can hit righties and lefties. Like, he hasn't even started to implement the ability to get the ball in the air a whole bunch. Like, he's one of those guys that, he is going to barrel, he's going to hard hit, but he's an all fields guy. He's got pure raw power. I think there's still a ton more in his game, and there's a few of those tweaks where it's like, well, hey, buddy, you just start pulling the ball, and you're going to put up some ridiculous monster numbers. He's always going to have big monster power numbers. So I'm worried about the strikeouts, but both of these guys had it. Historically bad second half, specifically for James Wood, was one of the worst fantasy players in the second half with his strikeouts. But, I think a super young guy. I don't worry about some of the splits I do with Pete Crow Armstrong, so I think I would take James Wood, but I'm really not sure this is the year either one of these guys are really great investments based on what's around them, but I will take James Wood in this debate, and I don't know if Rico feels any different.
Orrico, 690 OPS in the second half after 915 for James Wood in the first half, 278 batting average, 223, 24 home runs, 69 RBI, just 7 and 25, but to Welsh's point, against left-handed pitching and right-handed pitching, he had an OPS that was certainly much better, over 800, 825, and 823 against both. So clearly, hitting lefties and righties isn't the problem. I'm a James Wood guy, too. I'm curious, James Wood or Pete Crow Armstrong in the debate of two guys who really fell off after the All-Star break?
Yeah, I think the right answer is neither of them, but if I had to choose one, I agree with Welsh pretty much with everything that he said, which is kind of rare. We usually disagree a little bit.
We do have some disagreements lately.
Give it time.
Yeah.
Give it time.
I'm in lockstep with Welsh right off the bat here. We'll see if that continues throughout the show, but I agree with everything you said. This range is really deep in terms of SP1s. You can still get yourself a guy like a Trey Turner or a Kettle Marte. You can get an Edwin Diaz if you want to lock in that first closer. I mean, there are a lot of really great, solid options going here. These guys are not discounted at all based on that second half. Maybe a little bit because there was some talk of PCA could be a first rounder and he's more of a second, third rounder depending on your format. But they're both really, really risky. I mean, James Wood in the second half, it was a 39% strikeout rate. They both really got figured out. And I think it's safer to just go with one of those more proven commodities in the second and third round. If I'm going to take my chances, if I want a shot at this type of profile, specifically in the PCA range, I'm going to just take Michael Harris or Ceddanne Rafaela because I think they're pretty much the same type of player, the boom or bust guys that can give you a 6-homer, 6-steal fantasy week, and then the next week go 1 for 23. If you're talking about swing and miss rates, you're talking about chase rates, poor on base skills, I think those three guys, PCA, Rafaela, and Harris, are pretty much the same guy, and you can get the other two about a 70, 100 picks later, depending on your format. So by and large, I'm staying away from both of these guys unless I got a dramatic fall. I think Wood is safer. Like you guys mentioned, he can hit righties and lefties equally as well, but there are also risks with his profile. The lineup around him is really bad. I think they're both better left for somebody else this year.
By the way, as I was driving in today before we got into the show, this is good that we're agreeing because I opened up Instagram and I saw your two faces looking at me. I wasn't here for the shortstop show, and this was they clipped Ellie De La Cruz, and this dude over here, Rico, is just trashing Ellie De La Cruz, and Joe's like, "Oh, the comments are going to get into it," and I was like, Joe, I'm screaming. Like, I was screaming. I was like, get him off of here. What is he doing? And so it's good that
we're
I'm just joking.
By the way, have you seen him in camp yet? Holy cow.
He looks absolutely. No, actually, I'm going to try to go to the Reds this coming week. I saw him
yesterday. Holy cow.
Yeah, he's added a bunch of muscle.
Somebody hit the weight room.
This is a James Wood type of point as well. It's the ground ball stuff. You know, James Wood hits the ball in the ground more than 50% of the time. It's that single-digit launch angle. You've seen it with my guy Vlad, with Oneil, Cruz, with a lot of great power hitters. They just can't elevate, and I think that does cap James Wood and Ellie unless they make some changes in their hitting profile.
Yeah, but I also think like that is like that's what's in store. Like if you don't view future progression, then I understand that. And also, by the way, you can't just be like, oh, every single player is just going to keep getting better and better. Like that doesn't happen. But when you do look at like elite players, and specifically like I look at James Wood, and it was that comment, by the way, in the Instagram reel that I was just like, when you were talking about Ellie, and you're just like, well, I think you called him the ground ball merchant, and it's like he needs to get the ball in the air. Like, yeah, we're doing that. 25 homers with 50 stolen bases is great, but he also has this profile that if those changes start to lock in, then great things can happen, but his speed is there. James Wood, specifically, is a guy that has 16% barrel rate, 56% hard hit rate, and he could hit both sides for righties and lefties. Yeah. This is classic young guy stuff. Yes, it's a 6-degree launch angle. That sucks. 11% pull rate. That's not good. But the guy has got crazy big, like max EV. He hit a ball 118 miles per hour last year. He had a 94 average exit velocity. He has tripled his launch angle year over year. So I don't think we're done. I don't think, and I feel the same way about Ellie, but James Wood specifically. James Wood's a guy, he's going to hit 40 homers at some point in his major league career. And he has the underlying profile that small tweaks can get him there. So that is why I want to, play the side of James Wood, where Pete Crow is really tough.
I don't deny the raw talent and the raw power. I think part of it, maybe for me being in Toronto, is being biased and watching Vladdy with those same sexy tools.
Point.
And he hit 23 home runs last year, despite the hardest exit velocities. The barrel rates are still in the upper limit. And even as a generational type of talent, a top 10 hitter in the sport, for a guy like Vladdy's talent, it's still been hard to reach the 30 home run threshold a couple times. So
high-end contact hitters, though. A little different than Ellie and James Wood, but your point is still valid.
Fair. Fair.
All right, we know we're getting at the top here with guys like Judge and Soto. I mean, Julio, you have to wait for that, the first 2 months to be slow. I think we've all learned that. Tatis, you know what you're getting. But Corbin Carroll, Orrico, how far have you dropped him off the hamate bone issue? Just out of curiosity. Is he at 7 for you overall, or have you dropped him further down? Would you take Churio over him, or even guys like Wyatt Langford or Roman Anthony at this point?
What's bigger, the number of outfielders you've dropped him or the number of rounds? Has he dropped from outfielder 5 to 6, 5 to 7, or did you drop him from round 1 to 4 or 5? Because I do remember a little chat we all had, and you were talking about Corbin in the 3rd, maybe 4th round?
Yeah, my initial instinct was to drop him and Lindor about 25 picks apiece. So going from, and I had Carroll like a little bit above consensus before. Like he was my 3rd outfielder in my initial rankings. I had Judge, Soto, and then Carroll. And for me now, he's hovering around that 10th outfielder type of range. I would still take him over PCA. I'd take him over Wood, but I think Churio is safer. Tatis is safer. Tucker is safer. I really am a sucker for Wyatt Langford. I think Brent Rooker is probably just about as safe. So yeah, he's fallen more in the outfield rankings than in the round range. I think if we're talking about a traditional snake draft, he's probably a target for me if we start to get into the 30s. And I think that's about right. Maybe late 20s.
Welsh, how far have you dropped him off the injury?
So I had some of the initial reactions. I think you have to, like, we're now at the point where it's like you got to go Kyle Tucker, you got to go Tatis. I had him also as like my 3rd outfielder. He's got to go behind those guys. There's this really interesting line at like Jackson Churio, which in ECR he is at. I have him right there. I have him at 7. That is where I've got him. Out of camp yesterday, the word was they were talking to Alec Thomas, and Alec Thomas had been working at left and center, and everyone's like, oh, that's interesting. Why isn't he working at right? And he even said the expectation is it's now looking like Corbin Carroll might not miss any time, if not a whole bunch at the beginning of the season. Today at camp, as we were recording this, he was doing his workouts, and he is castless already. I mean, he's a freak of nature. Now, that's not to say that, they don't put him on the IL, but it really looks like this stint is going to be lower. But there's an inherent risk of bringing on an injured guy. I'm going to put him at 7. I think you definitely can get him earlier. If you want to take Churio over him, I think that's fine. But then, like you just listed off, okay, Pete Crow, James Wood, we're worried about. Brent Rooker for power. I think Corbin sits nicely in the back of the 2nd round right now. I think he's a really good, like, wheel-ish 2nd round pick, maybe even in the mid-2nd round if you feel comfortable, if it's like a shorter, like, 12 team and you can get to more guys. But I'm comfortable with him in the 2nd round as outfield 7.
All right, Orrico, let's talk about a guy that you want to pinpoint here. Let's talk about Ronald Acuna here, who is currently the 3rd outfielder off the board. Obviously, he had missed time in the last couple of years. One ACL, then another ACL. So what are we looking for out of Acuna in 2026?
That's the thing. I wanted to discuss him because I really don't know 100% what to expect with Ronald Acuna. He has gone as high as pick 4 over the last couple of weeks, just looking at NFBC drafts. I think if we start to see some crazy spring training videos, he could go as high as 3, and we could end up potentially seeing a big 3 there with Judge, Ohtani, and Acuna, depending on what happens over the next few weeks. When you look at what he did in the Venezuelan League, and I know some people will say, well, it's the Venezuelan League. Like, how much do we need to take that into account? It's winter ball. 11 for 11 in stolen base attempts, and he had just 71 plate appearances. So that shows that he's feeling healthy enough to at least test it out, right? Whether or not the quality of the catcher's trying to throw him out, like you can debate all that. But the fact that he's willing to run on it is a decent sign, right? I don't know if he's going to get back to 73 steals. In fact, I would bet that he never does. But I think there is also a chance that Acuna gives you 30 homers, 30 steals, hits for a very high batting average in a lineup that should be very, very good. The problem here is that we're not getting any discount, considering that if you combine the games he's played in 24 and 25, it still doesn't equal a full season's worth of games. I think you should be getting more of a discount, but the upside being the number 1 overall player makes him just so enticing. I figured I would just discuss the pros and cons of Acuna, because I think for somebody who's playing in 10 or 15 leagues like we probably will by the end of it, it's worth taking 1 or 2 shots on Acuna. If you're playing in one fantasy league this year and you're up at pick 3, pick 4, that's really risky to take Acuna and have that be your only league for the year.
Look, I'm not thinking he's going to steal 70 bases again, but I do think he gets back into the 30s, and I think the home run power gets back into the mid-30s as well, and that's going to be a very productive player. I think he's going exactly where he should, which is after Judge and after Soto, and I don't think there's another outfielder I'd rather have. It's Acuna, And then the only guys that would take over him are the two guys I just mentioned, Welsh. That's my take.
I mean, I have Julio over him. I think Julio's really established himself.
Just out of curiosity, when has Julio ever had a season at the peak of what Ronald Acuna can give you?
Oh, I'm not. I mean, you're right. Like, the peak of Ronald Acuna is better than Julio, but I get 30-30s from Julio Rodriguez. Like, he's consistent. And I think he is stepping into his maturity, and I know it, and I can count on him. What that means to me is, like, I do have worries about Acuna. He's pretty perpetually hurt. And if the running, like, we know if something happens early on, what's the first thing to go? It's like the running is going to stop. But he has missed significant time. So this, to me, is not a talent thing. Ronald Acuna is immensely talented. One of the most talented baseball players out there. But, like, he is borderlining like a hardcore, like Giancarlo Stanton, like injury thing where it's just like every single year. So I just like Julio. I think Julio, like 100, 30 guy, the average is sticking in. He even talked about, he's like, I learned more about myself this past year than any other season. And I think it's the consistency of like where he's established himself. But if I'm going upside, yeah, I'm not going to disagree with you on Ronald Acuna. The stuff is all there. I think the biggest question we have is the stolen bases. Are those going to tick up? Venezuelan League might be a good telling sign of it. If he's a 40-30 guy, he's a no-doubt first-rounder. In no world should he go above Soto. You guys mentioned like the big three. The big three is Soto. Acuna could be part of the big four maybe. But like this is part of my screaming match on the Instagram thing. I think like Elly De La Cruz has got the same upside of Ronald Acuna. Like he could steal 50, 60 bases. He could hit 20, 30 homers. He plays on the middle infield. What is your irking about Orrico? Like I know we got 1 year from Acuna that was like one of the best fantasy seasons ever. Not disagreeing with that, but we're far off. Why can't Elly do a Ronald Acuna season? I don't mean to make two instances in the outfield episode about Elly, but in the comparison.
No, but it's Ellie's.
But that's kind of what you're doing, just low key.
I did do that. Sorry, I just saw the reel. It got me worked up.
I mean, I don't think Elly has the batting average upside. I don't think he has the RBI upside, and I don't think he has the power upside. I will say that Elly has immense upside, but I think that there is some limitations to it because of what we talked about earlier with the ground balls. I don't think he has the home run upside that Acuna has. He hit 41 home runs in his age 21 season. He hit 41 home runs again in his age 25 season. I think the batting average is more stable. I think the counting stats are more stable for him in that lineup. I mean, he scored 150 runs a couple years ago. That's probably not happening again, but I think the upside is higher for Acuna across the board, except maybe in stolen bases, considering what's happened with his knees.
And I'm not trying to make the big point there. Like Ronald, it was more about the freakish counting stats, like that Elly can steal 60 bases, and I think he can hit 30 plus homers, 90 on the homer combined stolen bases, and that's something that Acuna did. He had over 114 combined homers and stolen bases in 2003, but has not, has failed to like get far over 500 at bats over the last two seasons. So if he gets it back, Ronald Acuna is great. The profile is still there. There's an injury thing that you kind of worry about. He's a first-round pick. That's where the debate kind of ends here. But I had Corbin Carroll over him. I had Julio Rodriguez over him because if you want to play the safe game, I felt both of those guys were like immensely safer. But like Acuna's great. Like don't get it twisted that Acuna's not great. It's just he stopped stealing bases last year. He got hurt, and you'd really love to give me that 40-40 season that we know Acuna has in his in his pocket. But there's injured guys, and he's kind of floating around as one of those that it's like, can we get a non-injured season? That would be awesome because it'd be the first time in 3 years.
All right. One of my favorite guys, Welsh, that I'm not leaving drafts without, that I just did a video on, was Roman Anthony, because I feel like he's a 50 overall player right now, and I think next year he's going to be closer to a 25 overall player. That's my bet for 2026. Welsh, what are your thoughts on Roman Anthony, a guy who is kind of at the tail end of this first grouping here, but I think could easily work his way into the top 12 next year?
Yeah, I targeted him because I am the highest on FantasyPros. No one, you love him, but no one is higher than me. Bogman actually just me and Bogman did an episode looking at ECR and ADP, and we found out that I am the world's highest on Roman Anthony, positionally and on the overall, because I think he's a third-round talent. And if you can get him in the fourth round, I think that's great. I've said this a lot, that we looked at the profile of Nick Kurtz and the stats, and we were like, oh, my God. Yeah. The only thing we missed from Roman Anthony versus what Nick Kurtz had, it's a similar insane profile, except for the other positives. He just didn't get the big counting stat numbers, which I think this profile tells us is coming. 15% barrel, 60% hard hit rate is absurd. His average exit velocity was 94.5, which that is 100% elite. The only thing he did, like James Wood, it's the young guy thing. They hadn't got the ball in the air a ton. He had like a almost 7-degree launch angle. If he starts doing that and pulling, that like projectable 18 homers is going to turn into 30 plus. It's great OBP, gets on base, was leading off for this team last year before he ended up getting hurt and missing significant time. I think he's a massively, massively talented young player who it's kind of like Wyatt Langford last year, but I guess Wyatt Langford didn't really like ever step in, and he's kind of going around the same spot. This feels like if you can get him in the 40s and 50s, I legitimately think Roman Anthony is going to be like a 30-15 guy with a ton of runs and a ton of RBIs and high batting average. That's the other thing. Like, I've put more value into batting average on some of these guys just because he's going to get on base and make big impact. Now, hopefully the Red Sox aren't not running him in because they've lost a lot of the talented bats that are behind him. But wherever Roman Anthony is hitting, whether it's 1, whether it's 3, I want him on my team. I've got him higher than anybody, and I hope to get a little bit of a discount on him. But like 4th round, Roman Anthony is chef's kiss, man. He is going to do a lot of good wonders for your teams, and I love the rank range for him. And just don't sleep on him because he's around a bunch of names. I think that we're talking a lot about comfort here. We're like, hey, Brent Rooker and James Wood, and we know these guys. Jackson Merrill, he looks like a value. Roman Anthony sandwiched in between there. And legitimately, we could be talking about him in the same respect of Jackson Chourio. He could be a 2nd-round pick next year, and I don't think it would take that much. So very, very talented bat.
All right, let's talk also about the draft simulator where you could start mocking some of these guys and where you're going to get them. And you could do it right now, Fantasy Pros. Just download the app or go to fantasypros.com/draftwizard. You get instant feedback at the end of your drafts, what your strategy should have been, what you could do better, where the sleepers were you missed. And also, when you're in the draft, you can start going through, and if you don't like the players you're taking or you don't like where things are going, you back out of it. You can also see where you are in terms of categories projections, too, which is one of our favorite things here. You've seen us do the mock drafts here a million times on the shows. You should do a million of them on your own. Again, download the mock draft simulator, Draft Wizard, or just go to fantasypros.com/draftwizard. And while you're at it, you might as well be shopping around for a good place to actually play leagues, and Fantrax has all the bells and whistles you need for this fantasy baseball season. Their leagues are open 365 days a year. If you're looking for the ultimate customization, whether it be tailoring rosters, scoring, playoffs, consolations, anything you want, Fantrax can do. And of course, you can even make multiple trades with different teams as well, all at once. You want to do a team trade, you could do it. They've got all kinds of amazing fun things there, plus multi-division leagues as well. So whatever you can dream up, Fantrax can make it a reality for your fantasy baseball season. So bring your fantasy baseball league to Fantrax today for an unbeatable user experience. Sign up today at fantrax.com/fantasypros. That's fantrax.com/fantasypros. All right, let's get to that next tier of outfielders. Starts at number 16, Jarren Duran, a nice all-around player. Cody Bellinger had a great year for the Yankees. Hopefully he can repeat it in year 2. Certainly the ballpark loved Cody Bellinger, and Cody Bellinger loved the ballpark. Kyle Schwarber hit a bunch of Schwarbombs. He is coming in at 18. Byron Buxton at 19. Jordan Alvarez at 20. George Springer at 21. Seiya Suzuki at 22. Randy Arozarena. Tyler Soderstrom. Michael Harris at 25. Then at 26, Oneil Cruz, Jose Altuve, Kyle Stowers at 28. Teoscar Hernandez at 29. And Michael Garcia at 30. All right, so let's talk about some of these players here. Let's talk about Kyle Stowers, who came off of a breakout season here, Welsh. And frankly, now the question is, can he repeat it? Certainly he was probably a pleasant surprise for fantasy managers and the Marlins alike. Do you think 2026 will be equally kind to Kyle Stowers, who finds himself at the bottom of this second tier at 28?
I love Kyle Stowers. I actually think the profile, it kind of screams a little bit like Roman Anthony. It's another one of those guys where it's like top percentiles, and he had a 19% barrel rate. That is literally one of the best in the leagues. He had a 52% hard hit rate. That's top 6 percentile of the league. It's a super big, quick, fast bat. Gets the ball in the air. Unlike Roman Anthony, he had a 14-degree launch angle with really good, like 23, almost 24% pull air numbers. So it's like when he gets the ball in the air, he's also pulling it, which is going to equate to more home runs. And he had like some really good results. The guy ended up hitting 25 homers in like just under 400 at bats. So I think he can repeat. I am open to some regression because I think if you're staring at like he hit 288 he had 25 homers, and then you play the extrapolation game. It's like, well, he should hit 35. He might have a similar season in a full run. He did have a 27% K percentage. His expected batting average was over 20 points lower, but he hit all the pitch types really well. I think it's a really good underlying profile. And the thing I would talk about with like like he could regress or whatever, he actually comes at a good cost. I don't think he's super expensive down there. So he's definitely a piece that I want to try to get in drafts as much as possible. I think 30 homers is within the realm of possibility. Even if he hits 260, I think we're golden. Might get some stolen bases in there if he can stay healthy. And that's a kind of sneaky Marlins team. They want to win some games. They got some guys that are going to be on base and running in front of him. So yes, Kyle Stowers is like a really good piece, kind of a Roman Anthony light.
All right, Joe, I know there's a guy you want to talk about, but I'm going to throw another one at you, too, on the fly, too. Byron Buxton, coming off a season where he was far more productive because he played more games, something that's not been usual fashion for Byron Buxton. So is this ranking so far that you've seen appropriate for him as the 19th outfielder? Is he a top 20 guy, or do you feel, hey, you got lucky, you somehow threaded the needle last year in 2025?
The thing with injuries is that we're really bad at predicting them. It doesn't matter if it's pitchers, it's position players. Every year there are certain guys that we think are super, super injury prone and they last the whole season, and vice versa. Guys that are super safe get hurt before the season even starts. I think that the price is reasonable. He's not a big target of mine, but if you're getting him in the 5th or 6th round, I think that it is reasonable if you have a fairly safe build early on, especially one that's kind of built around high plate appearance guys. If you have the Vladdies, the Bobby Wood Jr. types, the guys that play every single day, the Matt Olsons, I feel a bit better about taking a chance on a guy like Byron Buxton. If you're taking guys in the early rounds who are a little bit more, platoon risk guys or guys who are not as stable in terms of their health, then I'm not going to be as interested in Buxton. But I think that he is priced reasonably considering he had a 35-24 season while still missing 30-some-odd games last year. I'm not taking him very regularly, but like I alluded to earlier, I play in a lot of leagues, so I'll probably take him once or twice just to dip my toe in case he's able to repeat. But we know what's going to happen, more likely than not. If you look every single year of his career, he's only played 100 games 3 times. Mm-hmm. So I'm not going to really bank on him doing it again, but there is a possibility. Like I said, we don't really know how to predict injuries. It's very hard to do. Even the top of the field experts can't really do it well. So if he played 152 games this year, nobody should be surprised, but nobody should really expect it either.
The super old dudes kind of scare me this year. Like I'm fading off. Yeah. Like you were like, Buxton. Like Buxton's production was cool versus where you draft him, but Byron Buxton. Like I know better than anybody. Like fool me once, shame on you.
Well,
fool me twice.
Fooled, a million
Can't
times.
get fooled again is what I'm saying. I can't get fooled again is
well,
what
it's
I'm
funny
going
because
at.
the 1 year that you were not in on Byron Buxton was last year, the 1 year that he played. So
and guess what?
Maybe we can predict it, Orrico. Maybe it's just whether or not Welsh is in on Buxton. So if Welsh is out, everyone else should be in.
Is expensive as hell. I mean, I'm actually going to talk about this in the bust territory for another outfielder. Joe's going to hate that I do, but I'm not getting to it. But that's the same thing.
Don't give away the milk for free.
I'm not going to give it away. I don't do that.
Just make everybody watch the end of the show. All right, Welsh, who was your target in this group that you want to talk about that you love or you hate?
Yeah, this is a hate one. I mentioned this some months ago, and frankly, of the players that I've defended over the last couple years, definitely I was always like, I'm going to take Buxton. I stupidly get into the if you give me a cheap Trout, I kind of can't help myself. But I've always also been like, give me Oneil Cruz. He's an absolute freak, and I just can't. So this is something I think Orrico and I are going to find some agreements here in this world. And I think we did this a long time ago. I just can't with Oneil Cruz, even though I think the counting stats are, freakish. He hit 20 homers, 38 stolen bases. There was a point where, he was just like the far gone leader. He still puts up crazy 18% barrel rate, 56% hard hit rate. Those are two things I'm always going to look at first. Those are awesome. He hits the ball harder than anybody. But the strikeouts are getting worse. He actually, in 2023, he got his strikeouts into 20% in a very, very short stint. Then it was 30, and it's 32. We're regressing in the wrong direction with him. The batting average is not stable anymore. 218 expected batting average. It stinks. He only hit fastballs this past year. Now, it's great that he hits the ball hard and he's got this crazy big profile, but this is a guy that we need a major change from. And I've heard no major changes, no approach, no one's working with him. I've just heard nothing. So I expect more of the same. I expect a batting average that will drag your team down. It's not a great team, even though they, picked up all the DHs in the world. Good for them. Nobody that can play defense and they can all just hit. But like, I just don't think there's a lot of support there for the RBIs. I don't think he's going to hit much higher than 220. I want to love Oneil Cruz, but you can't love Oneil Cruz when he destroys your batting average and he's going inside the top 100. So I don't like it. I don't like how high he's going. Really, for any player that hits 200, you shouldn't be drafted inside the top 150. Maybe things will break in the right direction because, again, he has these like great underlying things in his profile that you have to love. No one hits the ball harder than him in all of baseball. But also just nobody is as inconsistent as him in all of baseball. And, it's the fastest bat out there, biggest hard hit stuff. But what does it matter when you hit 200? Yep. So I'm a hate on Oneil Cruz as someone who's always loved. So he'll probably hit 260 this year and be a first-round pick.
Well, when it comes to consistency and things you can count on, Teoscar Hernandez, Joe, is one of those. And I know you want to talk about him. Like every year you're going to get at least 25 homers, probably somewhere around 90 RBI, and he is just that dude, and that lineup is never quits, basically. So let's talk about Teoscar. What kind of value do you see him as, or is he a player that maybe scares you a little bit when you're looking at the rest of these guys? Because to me, he seems like a value at 29.
Yeah, it's scaring me a little bit that I'm pretty much interested in every single Dodger player this year, which hurts me on a spiritual level.
Oh.
But I mean,
Can't
when you
beat
look
him,
at
join him, Orrico.
Yeah, I was about to say, I don't think that's a bad thing, but I get your pain. That's suffering.
This team, I mean, the team is super, super deep. They get deeper every single year, and with all their prospects, if they traded for another superstar player, I don't think anybody should be shocked by it. But when you look at what Teo's done over the course of his career, you're banking mid-20s homers. Usually you're getting at least 80-some-odd runs, 90-some-odd RBI, and usually you're getting a decent batting average. I think there's a little bit more of a discount this year on him because he's coming off a bit of a poor year. You're getting him around the ADP of 140-ish. But I read a really good article this morning from our friend Ryan Bloomfield about not so much focusing on recency bias of the previous season, but looking over the previous few seasons and trying to build the picture based on that. And Teoscar Hernandez is a guy where if you just look at 2025, you'd say, well, he's probably declining a little bit. Batting average was lower. The WRC plus was lower. But if you look over the picture of the last few seasons, you're still getting a guy who's going to chip in some speed. He's going to give you probably 25 to 30 homers in what is inarguably the best lineup in baseball. Mm-hmm. And you're getting him cheaper than you usually do. You're usually paying a top 100 price for him, and now you're pushing 150 on Teoscar Hernandez. He's one of those steady guys that you just set it and forget it, never have to worry about it.
And that's projections, by the way. I don't want to make us go on a thing, but that statement, it's a great statement by Ryan. But that is projections. It's like, hey, don't look at recency last couple of years. Well, guess what? Projections are built on, they're curved and stuff like that and weighted heavier to the recency year. But that's also why you kind of want to pay attention to projections because it is weighting those couple years. It's a little tougher when you do get I think once a guy gets 32, 33, you start maybe paying a little bit more attention to age declines and stuff like that. But I just want to agree with you that it's a super cheap cost on the best team in baseball with incredible run RBI opportunities. So Teoscar's in a good spot.
All right, tier number 3 at 31, Joe Adell, who had a very surprisingly fun season there for power and speed. Brandon Nimmo, the newest Texas Ranger at 32. Andy Pajas, one of my favorites at 33. I think he's a little too low. Luis Robert at 34, also a very intriguing lottery ticket there. Taylor Ward is now in Baltimore at 35. Lawrence Butler, a disappointing year for him at 36. Jacob Marcy at 37. Stephen Kwan at 38. Sedani Rafael at 39. Ian Happ at 40. Then Christian Yelich at 41. Jurickson Profar at 42. Noelvi Marte at 43. Bryan Reynolds at 44. And at 45, Brenton Doyle. A name I did not mention in the top 45, Mike Trout, outside the top 45. I feel like every year we have this conversation, and every year it keeps getting suppressed more and more and more. Welsh, is Mike Trout in your top 50 outfielders?
Don't ask me this. Don't ask me about Mike Trout. Actually, it's a good question. I don't have my ranks up in front of me. So let me answer it like this. He's probably not. Because I think there are, I've always been very blindly defendy of Mike Trout because it's it was for a couple years, it was Jacob deGrom, where I was like, hey, listen, yes, he gets hurt, but look at all the stuff is there. He's still barreling, he's still doing this, he's doing that, and it's that was the defense. This past year was really in our face about yes, he can still barrel the ball. Yes, he hits the ball hard. Yes, he walks, but he had 32% strikeout rate. That's
we did play
really
130
worrisome.
games, which is a nice.
Yeah, no, he played the games, which was really
2019.
It's really good, but this was the first year where it was in our face of oh, the strikeouts and the batting average, that's shaky ground. That doesn't seem really good, but a lot of the other stuff is still there. So let's wrap it back around. See, in my top 50, I'm not sure. Will I be drafting him? Yeah, I will. I was at an Angels camp yesterday. Now, I get Mike Trout as my fifth outfielder because Joe's shaking his head. I don't disagree. I think there's lots of scary stuff with it.
That's fine. If you want to throw it out there on Mike Trout as your fifth guy.
This is like the Byron Buxton thing. This is the Byron Buxton. When Buxton was going in the 230s, 240s, guess what? I take Mike Trout as my fifth outfielder, which he essentially is at this point, and he fails and he gets hurt again.
I mean,
see
would
ya,
you rather
throw him back
Dalton
in the pond.
Varsho or Mike Trout? That's
yeah,
the
Mike
question
Trout.
literally you have to ask yourself, right?
Yeah. Take him off the boat, throw him back in for chum in the water. I don't care. But I was just at Angels camp. He did an early morning workout at 9. Looks great. He's playing center field. Seems healthy. Good spirits. Blah, blah, blah. Pollyanna Welsh. Who cares? Like, I still think that big talented player is in there. But I do completely agree that he is on way shakier ground than he's ever been before. But, like, he's the cheapest he's ever been ever. He played games last year. He hit 25 homers. Can Mike Trout find, his ability to hit, solid contact? The guy that had a 260 or higher XBA every single year of his career. And all that means is that's supportive of a guy that consistently hits for contact, that has a great profile. Can he come off of one bad year? Yeah, he can. But he might fall apart. His back he's like a Lego piece and he just might tumble. All of that's a possibility, but you get to do it this year at free 99. Not me trying to make arguments about him as a top 100 player and being right for 3 weeks and then Scott Pianowski gets a laugh at me. No, it's the cheapest it's ever been on the planet. So yeah, I probably will have some investment in Trout, but like you don't have to. Like it's especially the guys that are around. I don't know if you're gonna. You had a debate on here, which is a fascinating debate. Like you can make the pass on Mike Trout if you want to, but if you want to chase 30+ homers, I think he's still that guy in there. I just don't. There's no MVP season. The strikeouts are worrisome, and I think people like Joe. I don't blame you for being this. Like you're probably completely out on him whatsoever.
I don't know about Orrico. Are you completely out on Mike Trout? Just out of curiosity, outside this group.
Yeah, I can't do it, guys. I mean, there's still a lot of outfielders in this range that I really like. We're going to talk about a couple of them, but a couple we're not going to mention today. Like Jack Caglianone is like 30 picks cheaper. At Profar, you're getting a top of a good lineup there if you want the super speed. You got Chandler Simpson. There's a lot of Alec Burleson.
Well, can I throw another one at you? Because you're naming a lot of good ones for a lot of reasons. Dalen Lyle, player 10 years younger, who had a really nice little cup of coffee there at the end of the year with the Nats. Showed some batting average, showed some pop, showed some speed. Like, is that a player who's pretty much in that same range as Trout that you would take over him?
Lyle is kind of a little bit of a fade for me as well. I think that he is fine, but I don't know that we're going to get close to a 300 batting average. 5% barrel rate. I don't think we're going to get a ton of home runs out of him. The lineup is not great. I think he's okay, and I think that if you're looking for a more contact-driven profile, I think in a points league, Lyle is probably the way that you should be going. Trout's just changed his profile so much over the last couple of seasons where he's really sold out for power. And we got the best case scenario this past season. After so many years of 36 games, 82-29, we got 130 games, 550 plate appearances out of him. And without having the player rater up in front of me, I think he was like the 70th outfielder or something like that. Like even when he was able to play, it still wasn't that impressive. The 26 homers was nice, but that's kind of it. He doesn't steal anymore. He doesn't hit for average. I just can't really see myself doing it. And there's also one other factor we haven't mentioned yet. I don't know if it's 100% confirmed, but they want him playing center this year. Yeah. Are you kidding me? That's crazy talk. For a guy who can't stay healthy, who's DH all of last year and played right maybe 15, 20 times, now they're going to put him in center every day again at his age? I think it's a recipe for disaster.
I think one thing I want to throw in there too, just real quick, is I do think it's important because I'm going to miss out on Trout pieces here because the other thing that does happen is like there are some guys that fit the build of your team. You mentioned Chandler Simpson, 1,000%. I did a mock draft where I waited and I was like, Chandler Simpson fits my build perfect because I had taken Eugenio Suarez and Kurtz, and I was like, I need stolen bases.
I made that pairing in an auction the other night. I got Simpson and Suarez.
Yeah, and I put those guys together. So like I agree on that because I don't want it to be like I'm gonna do Trout, but I also think like
wait, what don't you want it to be like?
It's like Trout, he's not gonna be anything.
I just wanted to make sure I heard it right the first time.
You heard it right. Like I think because it's so dirt cheap, like you can make the investment, especially if you're trying to build for some power on your teams. But like I'm also not taking him over some of the guys we talked about. I got a sleeper that's below. I like him. Dalen Lyle, frankly, if you want to pair 20 stolen bases. But like Adolis Garcia or Mike Trout, I'm gonna take Mike Trout if that was your comparing.
I'm kind of buying back in on Garcia. The projections love him. He feels like one of those kind of forgotten about names that could still give you like 25 and 10. But what I have to say about all these guys is George Springer showed us last year that just because you've been declining for a couple of years, you're in your mid-30s, you can still pop off an amazing season. And Mike Trout, one of the greatest baseball players of all time, if he finishes sixth in MVP voting and hits 37 home runs and hits 284, we shouldn't be shocked by it. It's a possibility.
Yeah, it's in the range of outcomes, as our friend Derek Brown likes to say.
It's not likely.
Orrico, let's talk about a target in this range here between 31 and 45. Who's a guy that you really like to target?
So it kind of goes back to my point about Teoscar, just the boring names that are a little bit cheaper than usual, the guys that always tend to produce for you. And Ian Happ has been that guy pretty much every year of his career. He's a 116 WRC plus. Each of the last 3 years, you're getting 20 plus homers. 2 of the last 3 years, you're getting at least 13 steals, and he is providing counting stats. 86 runs, 89, 87, 84 RBI, 86, 79. He's not killing you in the batting average department, and he has positions at the top of a really good lineup. Roster Resource on Fangraphs projects him to hit third. Now, he's usually been their leadoff hitter. He was in the leadoff spot for more than half of the games last season. But even if he's hitting third, first, it doesn't really matter. The top of that order is a prime spot for him to repeat that, roughly 90 run, 90 RBI season where he's giving you kind of 25 home run, 10 stolen base type of seasons as well. So he feels very, very inexpensive for a guy who's hitting at the top of a great lineup.
All right, Welsh, how about same question to you in this target range here? Who's the guy for you on the Welsh rosters?
Yeah, so, it's something I was just thinking about as Joe was talking too, because there's a little part where Orrico, I wanted to be like, who do you like? And then I was listening because you've had a lot of hates on this, but then you've also kind of like thrown out, like you like a lot of boring guys, and that's okay. But it made me think that like there's different spots where I have been a little bit more boring in the beginning of drafts, and then I see a lot of opportunities to take risks later in drafts. And you're definitely I'm not saying you are the opposite of that, because like you don't want any part of Ellie, and you've got quite a few, you don't want any part of Kurt. So like the super young, you don't like the young guys that don't have proven track records. But I feel like your overall team builds are going to lean more heavy to boring, where I have like boring, safe in the first 8 rounds, the big core things, and then I want to take some shots. And that leads me to a guy that I think I want to take a shot back in on, because he's coming at a cheaper price because he was a disappointment last year, was Lawrence Butler. Lawrence Butler, 21 homers, 22 stolen bases, didn't live up to expectations that I think people were thinking a 30-30 season was in line for. He regressed from a batting average standpoint, which is a bummer, and the strikeouts, they went in the wrong direction. He's been working through a lot of swing changes over the last year, and I think he had even a mid-season, it was the previous year, he had a mid-season adjustment, and I think he needs that again, because he hit 251 in the first half, which was really solid, still 16 bases in 350 plate appearances with 13 homers, and then he fell apart in the second half. He couldn't maintain. There are also some injury stuff where he hit only 203. He's recovering from a knee thing in the offseason where he's not going to play until halfway through some of the spring training games. But I was over at A's camp. Obviously, Nick Kurtz is just a behemoth to watch. Jacob Wilson is great. Lawrence Butler looks absolutely phenomenal. When you just see him in person, you can see just the glowing fantasy upside. He's still hitting the ball really great. His swing looks a little bit cleaner this year. And I would just throw out that he had some regression points, but I think he can pop back from this. I think he could be a 25-25 guy. And he's one of those guys that is cheaper that I think I can take a risk on. And I want to take a risk on. And that just brings me back to that whole idea we were talking about of boring versus upside, sure, where you do it, if you ever do it. And Lawrence Butler's one of those players pretty late here that I think you can get 25-25 out of.
Boring is good. Predictable is good because you know what you're getting. Unpredictable sometimes can win you a league, but it can lose you a league. It depends on how you construct and how many of those guys you want. I'll give you, for instance, in a league where I like how things are going, I would take the lottery ticket on Luis Robert, because Luis Robert, to me, contract year, new situation. Yep. We know how good he can be. I've seen him take some BP and a little. He looks pretty fresh to me. Again, just new for him is good. Anything new is good for him. But if I was in a different kind of scenario too, and I needed more just solidify my guys, like Andy Paz is the guy that I like. Okay, I think I know what I'm getting with this guy. It seems pretty solid. He's a Dodger. Let me move on. So again, roster construction has a lot to do with this. Before we get to the sleepers, the busts, and the must-haves, quick shout out to our sponsor, Hard Rock Bet. And if you haven't tried yet, make your first bet over at Hard Rock Bet. There's still time. You get 150 in bonus bets when you win. Plus, when you go ahead and bet $5, you get your winnings and 150 in bonus bets when you win. Pretty good deal there from Hard Rock Bet. So download the app today. That's Hard Rock Bet Sportsbook. All right, Orrico, give me your sleeper for the outfield for 2026. Who is it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not beating the boring allegations here because
No,
I'm
you
going
are
right
not.
back to that well. But I mean, I will take my shots on the upside guys mixed in throughout the draft, but I'll also really take my shots on guys who have a discounted price, who have an established baseline for a number of years. They have a poor season, and then that price is dramatically different than it has been. Bryan Reynolds has been a top 100 pick for the last pretty much since the COVID season. Every year you're getting 24 and 5, 27 and 7, 24 and 12, 24 and 10. This past season, it was 16 and 3 with a reduced batting average. WRC plus is 99. But below the surface, there wasn't much that really changed from him. The barrel rate was still in double digits. The average exit velocity at 91 was the best of his career. 46% hard hit rate is still really good. And the contact profile is still pretty solid as well. The swing and miss is a little bit higher than I'd like with a 13% swing strike rate, but that's kind of roughly where he has been throughout his career. I don't think it's going to kill him to be in that range. I think he is a 20 and 10 guy that people don't really care about in their drafts. He's pushing outside of the top 200 picks in a lot of rooms. Sometimes he's just inside, but the recent ADP I'm looking at over the last 2 weeks, 205 ADP for a guy who's in the best lineup he's ever been, who's going to be hitting in the middle of it, who plays every single day. He's logged at least 600 plate appearances in each of the last 5 seasons. And like I mentioned, he's 100 picks cheaper than usual. So I will take my shots, but I love me some boring players too.
All right, give me a sleeper here, Welsh, for you at the outfield.
Yeah, I've talked about him a decent amount, and obviously when taking your shots, you can't pair a bunch of risky guys together, so you're going to have to figure out your boring, exciting combination. And one of the guys that I want to get really late is Dylan Cruz, and I've talked a bunch about it. Dylan Cruz, he kind of stunk last year. He hit 208, and but Oneil Cruz hit 200. I don't think that's sticky. He had an expected batting average that was almost 30 points higher at 235. Still nothing to scream home about. But while he sucked, he hit 10 homers and 17 stolen bases and under 300 at bat. So he could have continued sucking and been a 20-30 guy. If you think the profile is going to improve, which I do think it's going to, then there could be a lot of good stuff in the future. He went from 6.4 to 9.7 barrel percentage. He's still walking. He's still hitting the ball hard. And he's got this real it's an anomaly thing that it just doesn't stick with a lot of players. When you really, really struggle against four-seam fastballs, that's going to change. He hit 164 against four-seam fastballs, the number one pitch he saw, with an expected batting average 40 points higher. If he gets just that improvement alone, that's going to get him back up to being a 240, 250 hitter. I think there's a legitimate 20-30 season in front of him. And don't be shocked, especially with all the weird stuff we talked about with James Wood. Dylan Cruz could be right back in the discussion and maybe even more valuable than him. So he's going super dirt cheap. I think we're going to get this young guy bounce back on Dylan Cruz. And I like him as an easy 2020 guy pretty late.
All right, Welsh, give me your bust then on the other end of that spectrum. I think your guy is a guy that I actually picked that I'm avoiding this year as well based on age and how well he did last year. And I just don't think we can copy and paste 2025.
Yeah, I mean, and I'll just be absolutely blatant. Like, when you look at the profile, there's not a great argument, and it's George Springer. What's the good argument when you say, hey, 47% hard hit rate? Holy crap, he almost doubled his barrel, 16%. He got everything was so dramatic, but it was so out of pocket. Like, he had 3 straight years where it was like really low barrel rates. He wasn't hitting the ball hard. Yes, he doesn't strike out. Everything changed to a degree that seems really, really hard to replicate. If he does, he was almost a 30-20 guy. He was an MVP candidate to some degree, but he's also like 36 years old. I think there's an age decline situation that's going on. I don't buy last year. But even outside of that, I don't like the cost. Like, I have to pay top, 20 or 25 outfielder for what he did last year. And I think there's some inherent risks in it. He doesn't strike out, which is good. And maybe this will kind of be silly, but maybe this is the ultimate boring guy. I don't want to pay last year's price for George Springer this year. So there's not like an awesome, compelling marker, except that like a lot of this was just so dramatically bigger. It seems like an outlier.
All right, Joe Orrico, give me your bust here for 2026.
I will say about Springer that he was the 3rd outfielder last year, and now he's being drafted as the 22nd outfielder. So I agree with you, but I think that the price difference is justified. I think that he's fallen enough where it's a conversation. But then again, you guys already know I like my boring guys. I really do. Oneil Cruz is my bust. I won't go too deep in him because we've already talked about him a lot, but I just don't trust his profile at all. I think that there is a decent chance that he is not even in the major leagues in a few years if he doesn't shape up, because he plays a horrible defense wherever he is on the field, whether it's at short or in the outfield. We're talking like -14 defensive run saved last year in the outfield. It's some of the metrics disagree on him, but if you're not doing it from either side, then you're causing problems. He's the highest drafted player who is a platoon bat by far on the board, so you're already missing out on a bunch of at bats, and I think that he could potentially even lose more playing time if he doesn't figure things out pretty soon.
All right, so Joe, give me your must-have then, since we were light on Oneil Cruz. Who's the guy that you got to have in 2026 in the outfield?
It's one of our people, Joe, and I'll call him by his Italian name, Jack Caglianone. Jack Caglianone. Hey, how you doing? You know, he had a horrible season last year, no question about it. 157 batting average, 7 home runs, but I trust the profile still. This is a guy who we were talking about in the same breath as Nick Kurtz, and obviously Nick Kurtz far exceeded what Caglianone did last year. It wasn't even close. But Caglianone showed better plate discipline to some extent, only a 22% strikeout rate. He was walking 8% of the time. I think we can see some pretty high on-base percentages. He was over 400 in the minors. I don't think he's going to be that high, but the projections have him mostly in like the 320 type of on-base percentage range, 20-some-odd home runs, couple of steals in a really, really good lineup. I like what the Royals have done. As a whole, I think they're a really fun fantasy team. We mentioned it on the catcher preview as well with Carter Jensen, but I think Caglianone with his 12% barrel rate and the walls coming in could be a very cheap source of 30 home runs this year.
All right, Welsh, give me your must-have guy in the outfield for 2026.
Outside the top 50, so he's must-have because you can have him if you want him, and I do. It's Wilyer Abreu, who had been in the world of kind of platoon bat, and I think this is going to be the year that is going to go by the wayside. They're going to give him a full-time look, and Wilyer Abreu last year, 247, 22 homers in under 400 at-bats, and like I said, he's already kind of bucked that trend. Great barrel. He's improved that every single year. He's still hitting the ball hard. He lowered his strikeouts. He got the ball in the air more, and he pulled the living crap out of it, and he's going to be put in a big position. Guess I like some Red Sox this year for RBI opportunities. I think it is very well within reason that Wilyer Abreu can put up 30 homers, and he is not even a top 50 outfielder. So Wilyer Abreu should and will be on every one of my teams, and he's a guy that you can, put as your 4th or 5th outfielder if need be on so many teams. That is going to provide a little bit of everything that you need outside of stolen bases.
All right, there you have it, everybody. That's the Ultimate Outfield Guide. Again, we've got the Ultimate Guides here on the channel. Go through the whole playlist. Watch them all. Get ready for all of your drafts this upcoming season. And, of course, subscribe to the Fantasy Pros MLB channel. Next week, starting pitchers, Eno Saris, Nick Pollock. Lots of big guests here joining us to talk to those pitchers. We only bring the best here for all of you because that's what we try to do here at Fantasy Pros MLB. Gentlemen, great job as always. That'll do it for us, but the story of the game goes on. For the Welsh, I'm Joey P. and Joe Orrico. All of his Italian pronunciations, all the Joes. We'll see you next time, kids. Get ready for fantasy baseball, baby.